Thank you, everyone. My name is Hormoz. I'm from Dubai, and it's a pleasure to be here in Cape Town. I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, and we're going to delve in straight into the questions.
Awesome, awesome. Great to be here. Thanks for having me, brother. My name is Lethu Lushaba. I'm a senior market analyst with HFM, trading for about 8 years, also coaching and teaching financial markets for the past 6 years.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Elke?
Hi, my name is Elke Brink, and I'm a wealth advisor with PSG Wealth. I'm local, so I'm from Stellenbosch, and yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Nice.
So everyone, I'm Blake. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at VALR.
What?
I'm not sure if it's working.
Yeah, that one.
You're going to have to hold the microphone.
No problem. Okay, cool. Hopefully you can hear me now. So my name is Blake. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at VALR. So we are a crypto exchange. We're the largest in the country, and we help folks get in and out of crypto from rands, dollars, euros, pounds. We also offer derivatives in the form of perpetual futures, and we have a bunch of earn products. I've traveled all the way down from Joburg to join the Cape Town rain. So thanks for your hospitality. But yeah, back to you, Hormoz.
Pleasure. So it's quite interesting, actually. We have different kinds of, I think, different kind of clienteles as well. We got two brokers here. We have different kinds of clients. We got asset management, wealth management, and then we got the crypto guys. So we kind of have a quite different views of the market, I think.
For sure.
I just wanted to jump in straight away into the questions. And the first question I had written down was Trump's relationships with South Africa. Trump is huge subject this year, of course, and he's making huge waves in the market. He just tweeted 5 minutes ago, and things are moving. So very important subject, the word Trump. And what is his relations with South Africa? I thought he was an ally, but then I don't know. Where is he standing with South Africa?
So the way that I look at things, obviously, it's very interesting what you're saying, because in the beginning, we as traders thought we wanted Trump. And then we realized that, and then we realized when we got him that actually, it comes with a lot of volatility to have such a high impact.
Too much volatility, is it?
A lot of volatility, right? But overall, when I look at what Trump's objectives were in terms of South Africa, I think personally, he looked at the BRICS movement, and then he wanted to slow things down with the tariff situation.
Yeah, he seems to be a little bit. So, but how about his personal relationship, Elke, with the president here? Was he seen as an ally? I thought he was. Or is he?
I think we're in an extremely interesting space, and I think the discussion our president flew over to go have with Trump a week ago was quite important, I believe. I think we're in a difficult space we will have to navigate very well. I don't think we always make the best of friends as South Africans, and I'm not sure Trump is such a big fan of that. So I think when we speak about this whole tariff war topic going on, I think we're going to have to navigate the American relationship very well. We do export quite a lot in different ranges of products to them. So I think in terms of the larger scope of our economy, it's going to be an important relationship to manage.
Yeah. Blake, what about you? What do you think of the Trump relations with
So
the government here, really? Is the government left or right here? Is there official line?
I mean, it depends which where your middle is, I guess. But I think most people would consider it more slightly left-leaning economically and policy-wise. We have a big social welfare state. So
he's a bit left.
So for sure, more left than the States, definitely. But yeah, I would say that relations aren't actually in an amazing space right now between the two countries. The tone of the last visit in the White House, if you watched it, I don't think was very helpful for South Africa. I don't think we look great in that. Unfortunately, we don't have as much of a bargaining chip as China does at the moment. In terms of our relative importance to their balance of trade, it's not immense. And I think we've got a lot of work to do to fix that relationship and to work out how to work with the Trump administration. I think there's a lot of things that have happened. So particularly on the aid side, and South Africa was a big beneficiary of US aid as an example. And there's a bunch of areas where we're starting to get penalized now for not being on the right team, at least according to them. And yeah, I think we do need to do some work. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a positive discussion in the States. I think it was largely a bit of a media affair, and hopefully they went off to a quiet room and solved a few problems afterwards. But yeah, generally, I think we're lucky that the dollar is quite weak. Otherwise, the rand would probably not look as good against the dollar as it is now. But yeah.
So Trump, does he have a different favorite politician than he doesn't have favorites here? Does he portray anyone?
Here in South Africa,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he has favorites. I think when it comes to how Trump does his business, he's looking more at what will overall affect the market and how his relationships. Remember what I said before, when he saw the BRICS movement, maybe he felt that he was under pressure to segregate those relationships. And if you see recently, he's actually had a lot of conversations with Saudi. I believe they've made some investment deals together. So I think that's overall what Trump's objective really is.
He's building golf courses in Saudi. Maybe he needs to build some more golf courses here. There's enough golf courses, maybe. Okay, and okay, cool. And Elke, anything to add on this Trump sort of? Do you think sort of South Africa maybe missed the boat there a little bit? They could have done a better job with creating a really good relationship with Trump. Maybe also was like you said, maybe South Africa's not making friends,
Yeah,
and it was not
absolutely.
necessary to clash with him, or maybe.
Yeah, I don't think we want them as an enemy, really, for many different reasons. I think not all of it's bad, though. I think, yes, the conversation last week was definitely not ideal. I think it reflected really badly on South Africa. And, but I think there are certain things that I think it's sometimes a good thing if the pressure comes from the outside, not an internal pressure. If we really want to change the country and change the things that are frustrating and concerning all of us, it needs to come from a different space. So there I am actually quite positive. And I think some of these things are just a bit of a media gimmick. I think on the inside, it probably looks much better. I think we do have a lot of bargaining power as a country in a way that we do have a lot to offer in terms of resources and mining and agriculture. And I think there's a lot that we bring to the table in a big way if we just learn to navigate it well in the bigger scope.
Yeah. And how about the policies he's done? I know you touched on it. The first thing he did was US aid story, which is hurting many countries. But then again, there was a lot of waste there. So for them, they were saving money, right? By cutting things. So, and there could have been other policies. Lethu, what's your view on, like, what are the policies that he's done so far? He hasn't done much yet, maybe with Africa, but that is helping or harming Africa or South Africa?
Well, mainly it's the tariffs, right? So since we've been having high tariff rates, overall we can see how it's affecting our inflation in Africa, how it's affecting our overall, I'd say, cost of living, right? And
the tariffs were historically, you mean, or now?
The tariffs now.
Recently.
I would say we haven't really seen the full effect of the tariffs now, but we are already starting to get a glimpse on what these new policies and tariffs can do to the economy overall.
So did he do a tariff recently on South Africa? Did he increase the tariff? He did, right?
Yes. So in principle, I think with all the tariffs were now changed in 2nd of April.
Globally, right?
Yeah, globally. So we don't have not as bad as China, for example, but definitely tariff increases. And I think there's just some room for movement, most probably. And I think that's something that we do know with Trump. Whatever last 2 months have been a great example. Everything he said was basically reversed or amended. So I think the expectation definitely for the year ahead is that we actually navigate a volatile world and not always knowing that exactly what facts are on the table to work with.
100%.
Makes sense, yeah. Blake?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one that was felt more immediately than the tariffs, obviously we fall under the AGOA agreement, and there was a big concern that we were going to be pulled out of that and no longer have free trade with the US under that agreement, which is can't remember what the acronym stands for, but essentially it was to promote trade with Africa and the US. So that was a big worry. But I think the more immediate thing that happened is they turned off, hundreds of millions of dollars of US aid that was primarily going into things like HIV and TB programs, and that was an immediate cutoff. And it doesn't, obviously, depending on what your stance is, doesn't really matter. But the impact of that was a lot of the NGOs and the folks that were basically administering these funds and going out into communities and distributing HIV antiretrovirals and deploying this capital, they had their funding cut off immediately. And I have friends, for example, who worked in that sector that basically were given notice, on that same month. And
Sure.
so it did have a real sort of direct impacts in that space, particularly in the HIV sector. So I think maybe that was a bit harsh, but the reality is that did affect us quite a bit and continues to be the case. From a trade perspective, as you said, I don't think we've really seen how it's panned out because, there's a tariff and then it's 90 days delayed and there's another discussion. And, Europe's a good example of that. China as well, it's, 145% and then, okay, we'll talk for a month and then 30% and okay, actually, yeah. So he sort of goes very hard and then withdraws. It's yet to be seen what the pressure that he's applying on South Africa will do. We've already seen some movements in terms of the BEE side on ICASA for Starlink. There's already been some changes that seem to be happening. So the pressure is starting to have an effect, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting 2025 and see how it all pans out.
Yeah. I can hear the anti-Trump demonstrations outside already.
Yeah, exactly.
But how about the GDP? Do you guys have any numbers on the GDP? Is the GDP, it's too early to measure maybe. You said the impact hasn't happened yet.
I would say the impact is still going to happen. We've already seen how the tariffs are being used as an excuse to move the market. So basically, like the gentleman said, the tariffs will be initiated and then paused for 30 days or 90 days. And as a trader, I understand how this impacts the overall volatility of the market. But then economically, we're not seeing any stability, And that's the main thing I think that the tariffs have shaken in terms of the GDP rate. We will see how the reports are affected maybe in the next couple of months.
Yeah, Elke, is there any numbers on like GDP yet? Or
We've really seen the effect of it because nothing, and I think the effect we'll see on many of these things we'll probably only see a few years from now. So I think none of the effects would really be instant. I think in terms of tariff, it would be interesting to see what is eventually really implemented and how do we address that? Do we reconsider our exports? Do we reconsider where we're actually exporting to, where we're importing from? So I think that can have a bit of a change, not only for South Africa and Africa, but globally. I think there's going to be a bit of a reset in terms of
but like
depending what is really
a
implemented.
recession isn't expected, right? Like we're supposed to have growth here, right? Or like
we haven't had growth here for about 20 years. So, I wouldn't say there's an expectation of growth. We'll be pretty happy to see just whole integer digits growth numbers in South Africa for a change. We've basically been flatlining now for I would say 2 decades, and so I don't know. For us, we've got this problem that the US is perhaps starting to enter into, which is a stagflationary environment where your prices are increasing, but it's not driven by underlying growth in economic activity. And we've been in this place now for a long time, and it's probably the most, at least in my opinion, the most urgent problem we have to solve is actually generating real economic growth in South Africa and absorbing people into the labor force. We've got a huge issue with growth. Obviously, global macroeconomics are not very supportive of this right now, but the Reserve Bank dropped interest rates this week, the 25 basis points. The rest of the world seems to be dropping rates other than US and a few other places. And it's going to be generally an interesting time because, you guys are big gold price makers. And I can't remember, many times in history where the gold and the S&P 500 are as correlated as they are right now. So we've got, people that are very risk off on one hand and avoiding uncertainty, hedging inflation. And on the other hand, you've got people allocating capital to risk assets. So it's quite I would say there's a lot of people with contrary views on the market that are trading now, and we haven't seen how it's all going to pan out. But certainly in South Africa, we have to do a lot to get out of the slump. And if the US isn't careful and they keep creating this uncertainty and political uncertainty that we've had for a long time, they may end up in a similar scenario where they have both high inflation and stagnating growth.
yeah, I mean, electronically speaking, we're one of the biggest gold traders in the world. And you guys are probably the biggest Bitcoin traders in Africa. So I don't know. I think Gold's done well, but Bitcoin's done better, I think, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, gold actually, I think before the last sort of leg up now on Bitcoin was actually probably ahead of Bitcoin for the first time in about
Yeah.
10 years. But yeah, so Peter Schiff finally got his answer. But but Bitcoin is also, within 5-6% of all-time highs at the moment. Gold is also, reached, all-time highs. And I think if you bought gold in 200 BC or something, you've finally broken even. So it's been an exciting time. I think it's been great for folks in the CFD space and those in the commodity trading space. Lots of volatility. I know we had a conversation the other day. It used to be euro dollar, and now it's all gold. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But both Bitcoin and gold supposedly are there as safe haven assets, and yet 86% correlated with the S&P right now. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Good perspective.
Yeah, it's going to make it tough to invest. So I'm going to let the audience ask questions later, but I've got a few more questions before we get there. I just wanted to go back to the sort of trade part, and I want to hear, what does South Africa import and export? Mainly maybe to US, but also to the rest of the world. I know you guys have great steak, so I'm sure beef to Dubai, that's definitely there. But what do you guys export, import here? Who wants to pick that up? Maybe Elke.
I actually had a quick read last night, and it was so interesting. I know we obviously big in South Africa on mining and metals and precious metals. And what was actually quite interesting, and I think the scale of it. So if we just look at aluminium as an example, I think in 2024, $530 million of value was exported just in aluminium.
Is that more than agriculture, probably?
Yes, it is a little bit more. Steel and all of these things are the same. Of course, we export gold and precious metals, diamonds, all of this, and then of course fruit and nuts, and that plays a big role in South Africa. So agriculture is a big space. You would think something like wine plays a bigger role. It's actually not so big in the export space compared
You don't
to the
export
rest.
enough wines. Everyone's drinking wine over here. There's nothing left
We're
to
good
export.
at that.
So interestingly enough, when I look at how the tariffs impacted the gold market, and when about 3 months ago we saw the US stock market actually taking a bit of a recession, I'd say, or a retracement, we saw the JSE at all-time highs. So that was also interesting because a lot of
because of
our
the gold
JSE
miners
stocks
and all
are
this?
based on gold mines. And
Gold miners and Bitcoin miners. They're driving it.
We don't have any listed Bitcoin miners yet, but yeah, maybe VALR will IPO, and then there'll be something.
Yeah. So, okay, so your export. How about imports? Like, do you guys know anything about the imports? Is it?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we import a lot more than we should. Well, we've had a trade deficit for a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the same problem that Trump is basically trying to solve, right? Is they're trying to bring money into the country as opposed to losing money every month. And yeah, we used to do a lot more internally and manufacture a lot more and do a lot more of the value added products here, especially in the raw material space. We, for example, if we think about aluminium, big example, we used to do a lot of the end-to-end processing of the aluminium ore, Richards Bay, big smelter, all that kind of thing. And we're doing less and less of that. So now we're exporting, iron ore and then bringing back processed steel. A lot of that stuff used to happen locally. So we're kind of exporting the raw materials and then bringing back all of the value-added products. And then obviously you lose that difference.
Yeah.
So we import a lot, but particularly technical goods, steel, building materials. Where we're good is where Elke was mentioning, is an agricultural product, lots of citrus, lots of grain. We have phenomenal farming expertise in South Africa with very little support from the States, versus countries like Europe and the UK with huge subsidies and support of the farming sector. We have very little, if not, negative support in the farming space, and yet are farming, highly competitively in the
It
world.
feels like farming should be able to support a lot more. Maybe
It does,
a lot of countries don't have enough.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of countries are looking to import South African farmers, and there's a little bit of that happening elsewhere.
They either take the farm products or the farmers. One of them has to go.
But yeah, so look, I think we need to do a lot more locally, and we've had some problems, right? We've had lack of reliable energy supply. We've had historically a lot of difficulty with labor law, and there's a lot of challenges for international companies manufacturing in South Africa, and we've seen big factories like the Ford factory, the VW factory, Toyota factories closing, and that kind of thing, we need to turn around. So yeah, we would definitely import a lot less if we could just turn on the grid.
Yeah. Last time I was here, there was the electricity problems as well, load shedding and stuff. Is that
Still
kind of
there.
solved a little bit? Still there?
Yeah, we have
better.
this issue.
But it's better now, right?
It is improved, but I've seen that it's a little bit political as well when it comes to how things are in South Africa. When we come towards an election,
Oh, it's
things seem
election
to get
related.
right. And then as
see.
soon as we have,
When is the next election? Is it around the corner, like in a few months, years? Does anyone know?
so the next election, I think, would be 2026.
So in a year,
Yeah.
over a year away
Yeah, no, we still got a bit of time.
before the issues. Okay, cool. I want to ask about the neighbors as well. Are there any neighboring countries down here? I know they're not big, but are there any neighboring countries that are doing much better? That you guys are hearing about and they're doing well and like the economy is doing well? I know there's Botswana, Namibia, the neighbors, Mozambique, and there's another one.
Swaziland,
Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe as well.
Zimbabwe,
Yes.
yeah, all those guys. Anyone doing really well out of those, or is everyone in the same boat?
So one thing I've seen in terms of neighboring countries in Africa, a lot of them might not have stable banking systems like we do here in South Africa.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the major
burden, yeah.
challenges, that we deal with in terms of neighboring countries. When it comes to overall markets, I would say South Africa does have one of the best performing markets overall in Africa. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there is neighboring countries that are outperforming us when it comes to economic growth or market growth. However, agriculturally, maybe I'm
Some
not
of
too
them are, yeah.
insightful on what's happening in neighboring countries in terms of their agriculture and how they do their imports and
Yeah.
exports. However, I do see that there's a lot of potential for farming to be in high demand in these neighboring countries.
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow a lot of these markets closely, but the reality is, especially our most northern neighbors, the economies are very linked and have been for a long time. For example, Namibia, is a very small population. You've got
Oh, I see.
1.4 million people there. Botswana, I think less than 2 million people.
Has any of you ever been to any of these countries?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're so small, no one goes.
No, they're amazing countries to visit, and they're incredible. And there's lots of mining as well in Namibia. They're big uranium suppliers, an example. But as an example, Namibia's currency is pegged 1-to-1 with the rand, and most of the financial services sector there is still served out of South Africa. And in fact, up until September last year, you could do a domestic EFT to Namibia. It was treated on the same interbank settlement system. So our economy is all very linked, and so I would say that relatively economically, we kind of all tracking the same. Places like Namibia and Botswana have had a little bit more stability in their government than we have lately. But Mozambique has been highly volatile and was on the brink of sort of civil war not so long ago after the elections. Zim is always a little bit up and down, and there's not a lot going on there economically other than mining and a bit of agriculture. Unfortunately, they've lost a lot of their economic substance there, but still pockets of growth and tourism and a few other sectors.
Excellent. Anything else to add, Elke, on this?
No, I think there's a lot of opportunity in Africa, and I think I agree in terms of from an economic point of view, not necessarily stronger. I think it's an interesting space when you start really analyzing some of the other countries. I think Zambia, and when you look at the mining space specifically, I think there's a very big Chinese influence, and I think that's an interesting space heading forward. Exactly where that would go. Definitely a lot of opportunity for growth, but I think in which direction that heads would be interesting.
Interesting. And so with the gold prices going up, I know maybe you guys are not experts in production of gold or whatever, but so with gold prices going up, does that immediately trigger more production by the mines? They go, it's so expensive now, gold, that are they over time working, trying to get gold out of there? How does it work? Is it?
Interestingly enough, I did read an article that said there's still a lot of gold mines that are actually being discovered in Africa. Neighboring countries like Uganda, Kenya, even Zimbabwe, there are a lot of new gold. So gold will always be valuable because, we call it God's money in the trading space. it will always hold its value. However, when we look at gold prices actually being increased, I think it's mainly being driven by the economic uncertainty. So when we see some stability in the market, we could see some retracements in gold. However, we do know how gold behaves long term. It's going to go up.
So do people feel that in South Africa that gold is a safe haven a little bit against the rand even?
I think it's
So keeping
investor
gold, a little
mindset,
bit of
yeah.
coins, or
I think people always like gold. I think South Africa, I think it's tangible, and I think a lot of people like holding a Kruger rand. And I think gold has even moved into a different space where you can now almost like a online banking card, you can pay with gold. So I think the systems are changing, but I think the principle remains when people feel uncertain, they run to gold. But yeah, I think we're definitely in an interesting space, as you said, in terms of at the moment people are running to gold and equities, which doesn't normally happen.
and some people like Bitcoin instead of gold, of
And-
course.
Yeah, crypto.
Bitcoin is known as digital gold.
The digital gold, yeah.
Yeah, but we do see that. I mean, a lot of our clients do buy Bitcoin and other crypto for the same reasons that people buy gold. It's generally a hedge against, I would say sovereign or monetary policy risks. And we're seeing a lot of that as the price supports the Bitcoin ETFs at the moment on average are pulling in about $500 to $600 million a day worth of ETF inflows. So that's net buys on the ETFs, and that's just the States, right? So they're well over now $50-60 billion worth of funds that have been allocated just in the US. On VALR, we're trading, probably, I would say now about $10 to $15 million a day worth of Bitcoin being bought and sold on the exchange. So there's a lot of activity. We're definitely seeing more institutional demand for it as well. And a lot of people do view it as digital gold. And we're quite excited about the changing perception, particularly amongst the institutional investors. So slowly these institutions are finding ways to allocate capital, and the plumbing is getting worked out. Right now they're able to access the BlackRock IBIT ETF the same way that they access Nvidia stock, and it's getting easier and easier for institutional funds to allocate. So from a Bitcoin mining perspective, it's getting harder because the difficulty is going up. Gold mining, obviously higher prices means you can mine deeper and more expensively. So it does mean that more gold can get mined, and I'm sure production will increase if these prices stay at these levels. South Africa, I think, interestingly enough, I think at its peak in the 80s used to produce about 85% of the world's gold supply annually. That's obviously changed quite a lot now, and a lot of the mines are now quite deep, and it gets very expensive when you mine more deeply. But yeah, we have a big gold heritage. We're one of the few countries in the world with a capital city in the middle of the country and not on a port, and that's purely because of the gold under the ground there at that time. So yeah.
Amazing, yeah. And and again, the stock market's done well. Year to date's gone up clearly, right? You were saying, and is that
All-time highs.
And because of the mining stocks clearly moving it up because of the gold.
Correct. So it's been interesting because we've seen how the market overall has performed well in the JSE, although we've been having uncertainty in the global market. Somehow the market has shifted because of the gold market being back. A lot of the JSE stocks are at all-time highs. And it's become interesting to see how these gold or these mining stocks perform based on the market still having so much uncertainty. Usually the stock market didn't behave like this. You would need economic certainty and to have investors actually buying stocks for you to see stocks at all-time highs. But now, even in economic uncertainty, we're still able to see how the market can perform. So there's a bit of a correlation there against what's really happening in the real economy and the overall stock market.
Okay, makes sense. Elke, anything to add on the stock market performance here? Your clients must be happy.
Yeah, it's been one of the nicer reporting years. I think looking back at 2024, we've had a fantastic year, both locally and globally. Absolutely looking back at the last 2 months, it's been quite volatile, but back where we were basically before tariff talks even began. I think it remains more important than ever. I think political and economic uncertainty does not always correlate with the market. And I think both locally and abroad. I think we have excellent companies. I think locally, mining, of course, we have a great financial system. If we look at the likes of a Capitec Bank and PSG Financial Services had incredible results comparing to international financial systems. We have a strong retail sector if we look at a ShopRite and these type of companies. So we have excellent sectors that are performing well, even in difficult circumstances sometimes in our country. And yeah, same in the global space. I think we're in for an interesting ride, but I think out of a sector perspective, it's been a good year.
Okay, makes sense. I'm gonna see if there is a question from the audience, and then I've got another question for you guys. I think we got one back there, and one here as well. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Can you keep it closer, please?
Oh, okay.
And shout like Trump does.
Oh, yeah, sure. And my question is actually Trump related. So I will try and shout as much he does. So my question is directed to the Chief Commercial Officer of VALR, Mr. Blake. I'm a crypto trader and coach in cryptocurrencies. And I just want to hear your opinion in relation to the, you know how the market has been volatile this year, the crypto market in particular. With the coming in of Trump, there was so much optimism to the extent that we almost have a false start to the bull run, which is anticipated by everyone. And we know where we are now. What is given the volatility that has been caused by the tariffs that Trump introduced in the market and is still introducing in some other countries, and the 90-day time frame that was given, what is your take in as far as the anticipated bull run by crypto investors and traders is concerned? Do you think that it has a possibility of starting this quarter, I would say this quarter, or next quarter? Traditionally, the bull run runs for a period of almost a year. If we take going back to the historical events, what do you think the outlook of this particular bull run will be like? One, in terms of time frame, two, in terms of possibility of it starting, and also the huge coming in of institutional investment. What impact is it going to give? So I think I'll be excited to get your input.
I had the same question. I wanted to ask about South Africa's, the role of crypto in South Africa as well. We can add that on the same question maybe.
Okay, lots to cover. I will try and do it quickly. So I think that I would argue that we are in a bull market. I just think that, historically, what would happen is Bitcoin would have a strong run up. And then maybe a month later, what people call altcoins, which are basically other crypto assets, would follow that with a bit of a delay. And I think what you're talking about is we haven't seen the altcoins outperform in this cycle. So it has been a different market. I think that's mainly due to the institutional interest in Bitcoin in particular, driving a lot more capital flows directed to Bitcoin, but very little of that getting rotated out into the lower market cap assets. That still might happen, but Bitcoin is still performing very well and is, I think, in a fundamental bull market. We've crossed the all-time high only a few weeks ago, and it's still showing a lot of strength. There's still a lot of volume. So I think we are actually in a bull market, but the debate is out there whether that is going to now rotate into other crypto market cap, lower market cap assets. I still think there is a role for certain altcoin networks like Solana and Ethereum, and there is still a lot of institutional interest in those assets. But yes, that's true. They have underperformed. And if you were 100% allocated to Bitcoin this cycle, you were in the best position. Time frame wise, I'm not sure. I think there is a lot of macro uncertainty, and that does, I think, put a damper on things. And maybe we would have seen a much more aggressive run up if there was a much clearer environment around these tariffs. And I think, if that does get resolved, I think we might see global markets run. But yeah, right now, I think the market is bullish. It's definitely more bullish than it was 2 years ago. And Bitcoin is up, 60%, over the last, year and a half. So I think it's done well.
Blake, can I quickly ask you as well? Is the uptake of Bitcoin in South Africa, is that big? Like, is uptake by people more than other countries in comparable countries, or are people?
South Africa is probably one of the countries with the highest degree of crypto adoption globally. I mean, I think there's varying statistics out there, but somewhere between 20 and 30% of South African working age adults have, either interacted with crypto or have had some account open or ability to buy crypto. So I think people generally understand that. And if you look at markets like Nigeria and a few others, Vietnam, Indonesia, there's a lot of usage of crypto because of some of the fundamental problems that people see in the economies. Access to dollars, things like this are a big problem in a lot of markets. South Africa is in actually a fortunate position relative to a lot of African markets with respect to being able to access foreign exchange. And crypto is often used as a proxy for that. So yeah, huge degree of adoption, a lot of Bitcoin adoption. We have an amazing crypto community here in South Africa, and I can see a lot of them in the crowd and walking around here, peers in the industry that are building technology and products and growing this space here. So we're actually very fortunate and have had some phenomenal innovation in crypto come out of this country.
I think USA has also high.
Yeah, USA is obviously the biggest market globally for this, but actually by trade volume, it's not. The bigger amount of trade volume happens in the East, and the market historically has actually been led in the Asian time zone. But it's only really with the introduction of the ETFs that we've started to see a lot more price discovery happening on the US exchanges.
We might have time for another question there. Hi.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Anthony. Background in economics and education. My question is basically from a strategy standpoint. I would like to find out and like to know what strategies have you guys employed in an uncertain market, and how has it changed to your previous strategy? Thank you.
Lethu, maybe you can take that.
Well, this is a great question. As a trader by profession, I'm used to uncertainty in the market.
Yeah, uncertainty is your middle
That's
name.
what I need. But overall, when we look at how the market has been performing, I think as a trader, the main thing that will make you profitable is how you manage your positions and how you gauge on how the market moves, because the strategies that might have worked in 2023 or 2024 might not specifically work today. So it's important to have that level of adjustment and understand how to adjust to the market. But overall, we have to stay in a place of understanding that the market will always have a level of uncertainty. That is important for us as traders to get volatility, to get into some of these moves. And it is sometimes, you can see how bad the market is or the economy is performing, but as a trader, you can take advantage of it. That's I would say, the dilemma we have as traders. Even though the economy might not be performing well and there's a lot of uncertainty, as traders, we can still have a lot of control over how our P&L is performing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're out of time. So thanks, everyone, the audience and the panelists. Thank you so much.